In terms of the international landscape for ICOs, so I think it would be quite perhaps fitting to start off with maybe a little bit of a geography lesson and go through in your own areas, how is the landscape changing? What do you believe your governments and regulators should perhaps be either thinking about or working on? What do you see as the challenges ahead? How do you develop your own crypto community in that area? That would be absolutely fantastic, because we've got some huge areas here, and I think it's probably just fitting for us to sit back and let you guys talk about your jurisdictions and domains. That'd be fantastic. So Jane, by the way, if this panel is half as exciting as the one this morning, then I think we'll all stay awake. So that was brilliant.
Okay, I will start by saying in Asia, China obviously is the biggest area for blockchain companies, ICOs, and I will go by the majority. China right now is banned, right? Ban ICO, ban all the exchanges. So everything is banned. So you go to Korea, also is a major economy in that region, ban ICO at this point. And then I think we will see they ban exchange also. So Japan actually gave license to 14 exchanges. So you have to have license in order to operate exchanges. So they didn't ban, they actually regulated. So you have to get a license in Japan. So Japan see its traffic goes up dramatically because Chinese people, if they have Bitcoin, they go to Japan to trade. Okay, so Thailand, the regulator already warning and say, okay, ICO is not a good thing. Okay, so I didn't see a lot of ICO out of Thailand to begin with. So they just say, you Chinese don't come over here. Right, I already said that. Okay, so Malaysia, okay, interesting country, say ICO is bad. Okay, don't, okay, Chinese people hear it. Okay, don't come over here, right? So that is basically Asia. So very, they're against it, basically, all the regulators. And then when I see this situation, then actually this bank actually did one thing in Asia, is spread the information about the in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Because before, I think large amount of people in those areas don't know about Bitcoin or in cryptocurrency. Now the government say banning, and say, oh, what is that? Then the minute they look at Bitcoin and then the in cryptocurrency, oh God, I didn't jump on the train last time because other people make so much money. I didn't know about it, so I didn't join. And then they're asking everywhere, oh, where can I buy Bitcoin, right? So actually the inquiry, the business is even bigger than before. So that is sort of against anybody who bans it wishes. So when I look at this, I say, why? Is people don't like to be robbed by few elites who in charge of money printing, which they created a huge, they print so much money, so there's inflation. So people say, okay, how can I, protect myself? Yeah, one way, they go all over the world to buy house, right? So if your region was hit by a Chinese wave of buying house, you will see the price goes up big time because of outside people come to buy. And then buy house is very complicated. If you try to buy a house inside China or outside China, it's very complicated. So some smart people start to buy Bitcoin to protect themselves from inflation. So a lot of people ask me, why in China? Say, why the Bitcoin go up so much? I say, you should ask, why the fiat money go down so much? It almost become a piece of toilet paper, because they are just shamelessly keep on printing money. So that is the people is revolt against central banking system, right? So that's what really is. And why then the government want to ban everything? Yeah, they want to have the monopoly rights to keep on printing money. And if all you store your value into Bitcoin, they're going to fail. So it's dangerous to that. So nobody want to reduce power when they have it. So that is our point of view. But the demand is so big, and the people still want to buy coin.
So question on that one first. So now it's unclear that is it that Koreans, it's banned to do ICOs in Korea, but Koreans, I understood, they are not banned to participate on ICOs that are from the elsewhere of the world.
Okay, actually, there's a legal thing is that illegal to own Bitcoin or other in cryptocurrency? So they didn't say that. So I just closed down the trading mechanism, right? There's no exchange to trade. And then nobody inside China as a company can issue coins to do ICO. So if they say, okay, guys, it's illegal to own in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, there's enforcement. That means they may have the law. If I discover you have Bitcoin, you go to jail, right? No country has gone that far yet. So that's why people still buy coin. It's just there's where to buy coin, right? Before you can do that. They sort of going to that already. But it's not illegal for anybody who own Bitcoin and other in cryptocurrency.
Jane, thank you. That's very good. Actually, Ransu, you've got a pretty global aspect as well because you run a marketplace. It'd be very useful.
Exactly. So I'm not going to talk about or Gibraltar, but it's more that like we have done. Our ICOs have been from the companies have been based in US, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong, then European countries, Lithuania, Latvia, UK, Germany, everywhere. Of course, the French, very little. Spanish, Italians, haven't seen those much around. But then, of course, in the US, where there have been the biggest deals from, there has been the big change has been that these same large law firms that we've been working with now for past 6 to 8 months, now they have changed their tone massively because of these SEC things, and now requiring or starting to require KYC, where they 3 months ago, for example, they said that they prefer not to have a KYC because KYC sounds too much like a securities trading. So they were said, okay, if you do loyalty programs or airline miles, sell something like that early, you should not ask KYC. So that has been an interesting kind of complete change of hearts on the legal side. But overall, I think that the US will be left further behind in a way on all fintech stuff because of their 50 states and all the regulations. And if you look at these big exchanges, how many licenses they have to have in USA to each state, it's crazy. So I think Europe's gonna be strong, and soon it's like okay, now Gibraltar and Zug, Switzerland are kind of leading the European landscape. But I would not be surprised if London takes an initiative and starts to catch up as well as a first, like a big jurisdiction. That's my thinking.
Thank you. Russia.
Yeah, I will give you an outlook what is happening in Russia. In fact, it's hard to tell what will be the final decision of the government because right now there is a great struggle between, for example, central bank, who is strongly opposed to everything like cryptocurrencies, like ICOs, blockchain. They fear that their regulationary grasp will weaken if everybody switches to such distributed methods. So the only thing that we hear from central bank is that all of the cryptocurrency should be banned and everyone who sells it should be jailed, and so on and so on. But thankfully, the other branches of power do not really agree with them and have more moderate position. For example, the last week there was a big meeting with the president, and after that, there were news that they decided that they should limit the amount of cryptocurrencies that could be sold to one person. That may sound like prohibition, but in fact, I think that's good news, because that basically means that the act of selling cryptocurrencies to sub-entities is recognized, because if you limit something, then it means that you recognize its existence. So I think that may mean that the process is moving in the right direction, that probably we can expect from the lawmakers some weighted decisions that will move the market in the legal space. And I think it looks good, and I hope that the position of the central bank will not win.
So we talked a little bit about U.S. coordination with other jurisdictions this morning, so I won't bore anybody with that. Maybe I'll talk a few minutes about my perception of the U.S. domestic market. Certainly mixed reviews by American companies as to the impact of the SEC guidance through the Dow report. Not surprisingly, given the number of technology and fintech businesses that exist in the U.S., there's still an incredible demand to do ICOs. And so one of the responses to the Dow guidance, as I referred to this morning, is to bifurcate the market, limit offering to accredited investors, and really to target accredited investors in a pre-sale done through a SAFT or another instrument. Now, that's still a developing practice. It may or may not prove to be the general way forward. But I heard a very interesting joke from a venture capitalist a few months ago now, which I think is demonstrative as to what's happening in the market. There had for a very long time been a complaint from companies that were not in Silicon Valley that it was very difficult to get meetings with what I'll call brand name VC operations in Silicon Valley, and so you would call and you'd get the message that they would get back to you, and then of course they never would. Now, regardless of where you're located, if you're doing an ICO, the joke is that the VCs will call you up and ask if there's room in your pre-sale. And so one of the interesting implications of that is traditional venture capital investing has substantial negotiation around corporate governance. And it's what I'd call a high friction investing business. And as in all negotiations, people generally on both sides feel like they've given up something in the negotiation. Here, the level of negotiation, it doesn't even really touch on significant corporate governance issues. So if it continues to evolve in this fashion, the influence of venture capitalists, at least with respect to governance, would be greatly diminished. Yes. And that would be in some ways a sea change in the domestic market. And I will tell you that the governments of some of the individual states other than California are relatively excited about that phenomenon, to the point that in the same way that the industry is experiencing some competition among different countries in terms of favorability of regulation, there's actually developing a competition among the states within the United States as to favorability of regulation.
So I think in terms of Israel, there is no interesting or exciting news regarding regulations. The Israeli government is kind of following the other governments, mainly USA, with regards to how to handle crypto. I think the interesting thing that is happening in Israel is on the side of the technology innovation. If you look at 2017, Israeli ICOs raised around $250 million. So if the entire market was around $2 billion, that's already 10-15%. And I expect that in 2018, ICOs coming, all blockchain companies coming from Israel will raise between $500 million to $1 billion. So Israel, in my opinion, will become the main geography even in startups that are entering the space and raising money through VCs or ICOs. And we see the ecosystem changing towards that. And there are more and more VCs forming or changing their legal structure in order to be able to invest in ICOs. We see new accelerators forming in order to help companies do the process of either entering the space or converting their business model and economy towards blockchain. And the companies that are entering the space are from small companies like seed, round A startups, and obviously there are a lot like this in Israel, but also substantial tier one companies in Israel. Everyone has an open mind. Everyone sees the opportunities. Companies that could be like Get Taxi that are worth billions of dollars are thinking about the space, thinking how to enter. And Israel is such a small geography, it's very easy for everyone to, maybe like in Gibraltar in terms of regulation, in Israel in terms of technology and innovation, to very quickly understand the opportunities, how to do stuff, and execute them. So I think Israel is already, but specifically in 2018, would become the main geography from where new companies, innovations, and startups will emerge in the field.
Ariel, keep the mic, because we might as well come back this way. But just following on from that, we heard generally that they're trying to potentially raise the bar in terms of possibly minimum funding, going from sort of crowdfunding to perhaps accredited investors. And equally, we're hearing that the bigger corporations, and you just mentioned it when it was said yesterday, they're actually looking at this space thinking it could be a fantastic way to access capital. So at the moment, it's innovation and it tends to be startup and tends to be fintechy. If it's going to go more mainstream, how is that going to affect the ICO landscape internationally?
So I think that big corporates in Israel, they look at the space not only from the easy way to raise funding, because obviously it's a good selling point and it's very attractive even to well-funded companies, but they see three advantages. The first advantage is raising money. The second advantage is that if you enter the space and you bring an interesting technology or economical solution, then you can really build something that can do some disruption. So we see it with Bitcoin and we see it with Ethereum, but there are other companies that identify a disruption opportunity to different verticals, whether it's insurance or so on, and they want to enter the space in order to disrupt it. And the third advantage is that if you go into the space and you are the first one to do it, you can actually conquer and be one of the top players, the Google of the blockchain space, or the Kik want to be the Facebook of the blockchain space, and maybe Get Taxi want to be the taxi player in the blockchain space. So they see themselves as, if you come in and you are first to market, then you can be the leading player there. So that's why major corporations are thinking about the space. It's not only about easy money. And in our view, and also from what we see now, we see that many such companies are looking and starting to work in the space. And I think that in a relatively short time, maybe a year or 2 years, if you would look on the index of the top 50 coins in CoinMarketCap or everything else, I would expect to see them coins issued by companies like some names I mentioned. And I think the first generations of companies, which are the early adapters, technology guys that came to the space up until now, will kind of be pushed backwards and replaced by companies with bigger teams, better execution, understanding of the market, and so on. And we see it happening in every vertical. So predictive marketing maybe is a nice vertical that is relatively successful over blockchain. And now there is a huge company in the space that is going to enter. And then it would be interesting to see what will happen with the existing ones, such as Gnosis and Ogo. And I think we see it in many, many other verticals. Kik is entering to the social space where status and other are there. In my opinion, they have a better chance to win these verticals over the first generations of companies that were there.
I would say most of my experience with the larger entities in blockchain in the U.S. is not revolved around ICOs, but around process improvement. And in particular, there are several financial processes that when you see the diagrams of the process flow, it's almost hard to imagine that they're functional at all.
Right.
The securities clearing process, when you see a diagram of that, you can imagine why it is so difficult for that industry to go from T+3 to T+2 when you have folks in the blockchain space talking about T0. And so one of the interesting phenomenons about that is that there are a number of smart players that are clearly not the first adopters, but should, I think, justly be lauded as being relatively early adopters of the technology. So I was at a securities conference recently to talk about securities processing, which I'm sure is everybody's favorite topic, but is highly relevant to my business. And one of the major players there was DTCC, because they wanted to assure everyone that they were going to adopt blockchain technology tomorrow, and there was no need for all the startups that everyone had heard about. So, too early to see how that's going to shake out and whether they really are true believers. But there's certainly, and I don't mean to pick on DTCC. This is a phenomenon. You can see another. Go for it.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Of course, DTC says that.
Yeah, we have a monopoly. Can we please just keep it?
Exactly. Exactly. So, but that is that's playing out in other industries as well. Banking, correspondent banking. So very interesting. I mean, one of the things that seems to be the case is that existing market entrants at least learned a little bit from the .com experience, so that they're at least trying to swim in the same waters.
Yes.
Early on.
Going back to the question of whether the ICOs will be spread to mainstream and what will become of them, I think that that's the natural way forward for them, because that's a good mechanism to gather money for projects from all around the world. And probably we saw a great success of retail crowdfunding projects not so long ago, with projects like Kickstarter funding a lot of products, launching a lot of new products. And I think we will see the same thing with the ICOs, but for the services, because things like utility tokens can allow companies to basically pre-sale their services for maybe a couple of years forward, and then to launch the services itself, and will basically provide the services for free for those who took part in the pre-sale, and get the money to run the business from those who didn't come in time to get the token.
Yeah. So first of all, these big companies, like we have already had a few of these talks, early talks with these guys that you can see on Wired and Fortune that are now interested on. They already have a $500 million or a couple billion business, and they now interested. Like there might be a way to to do a token round instead of venture fund. Of course, that's very exciting because that means that's a big game then when these guys already have an audience of tens of millions. So that's definitely the next level, no doubt. And then this kind of a ICO type of a fundraising, like these 2-3 fundamental things that first of all anyone can invest from anywhere in the world, because you can send Ethereum 0.1 Ethereum $30 as easily from Finland or China or New Zealand or Gibraltar to Gibraltar ICO. The cost is same, like few cents on a gas fees, and then so easy of investing, anywhere in the world can invest, and then the full not full liquidity, but liquidity on that always improves. Liquidity means the higher valuation basically. So these fundamentals we can just I think sky is a limit to think where that can be implemented and used as a funding method. So we very early stage.
Okay, I want to understand what do you mean by mainstream, right? It's about, so if the blockchain and the Bitcoin come out, so we suddenly realize we don't need a central bank, and then we don't need banks, and we don't need the insurance company and a fund or whatever. So all the intermediary we don't need. That's why all the central banks are so against it, because they realize they are not needed. So if you say the central bank is the mainstream, so blockchain, where you put it, right? But if the blockchain will be in the end become part of our life, so I want to give you an idea what won't be needed. So if code is law, so we don't need lawyers, right? And then if we never will have dispute, do we need court, right? So I was thinking about not the mainstream.
Sorry, Will.
Right? And then in China, some banks asked me to work for them. Can we ask you to help us use blockchain so we can, save a lot of money on clearing? I say, okay, sorry, I don't have time for that. You know why? I say, you guys are going to die. I don't know when you are going to die, but you are going to die. So I'm not going to waste time on your projects, right? So I say, oh, okay. So that's what I'm thinking about mainstream. And I want to alert you of other today's big companies that won't be necessary. For instance, the telecom company, right? So if the distributed node, like Internet of Things, IoT, so each lights which all this camera and this projector will be a node. So people just need to peer-to-peer create a telecom network that don't need a telecom company, that they buy a lot of expensive machine and sell us the thing. So if you have a light that is a node, so when people use this node to communicate, your light is making money for you. So buying a light can even make money for you. But now we're just spending the money until it blow out, we go buy a new one. So telecom won't be necessary, right? Okay, so what else? And then, this is, why we are the people who involve us in the blockchain are so excited about. So when I look at the ICOs, if this ICO, people love ICO because you can raise money, right? But I always kick out 99% of the deal. Why? Either you are a scam, I'm not going to be part of the scam, or your business don't need blockchain because you are still in the old world. Why not to use the current, technology? You don't, unless you are going to revolutionize this industry. Right, so we taking a deal like a German company who will do decentralized power system, solar energy, and then why I'm so excited about in China, all the energy need to be into the grid, which is centralized. Only solar energy don't need to be in the grid. So this is the only form of technology you can use to become a decentralized power grid. And I think why is it so important? If we get the decentralized power grid in, all these lights will be telecom. So your electricity system and your telecom system actually can be one. You don't need to build two systems. So in that way, blockchain in the future is a lot more than this in crypto ICO or fintech. It is going to totally change how we live and how we do things. So the only thing that is needed is the exchange. So anybody who is doing exchange, you are needed. Everybody else, you are not needed. So, okay. So
if you want to interview with me, I'll be around next week.
So one more question. So what happened to all these Chinese ICOs, because they were huge, there was a lot of them in a pipeline, and now came the ban, and then did these guys just scrap their plans and went back to work for other people, or are they now brewing the 2.0?
Okay, Chinese ICOs, everybody here don't buy. 99.9% are scams. Okay. I can give you one famous one that's why the government say, okay, I don't care, just stop it first, because if I stop it, most are scam anyway, right? It's not about to bring China into a better place. It's like you guys are a bunch of tricky people and trick global people's money. Okay, I can give you one pretty big ICOs come out of China, Quantum and Neo, right? Quantum's CTO was our shell-based CTO. So when he does that, when he worked for us, did the shell-pay 1.0, and then I realized his code was 97% copied. Okay, so our company don't want to build our core value according to a copy thing. So I fired him, right? So then later he does the Quantum. And then I realized this time 98% is copied because I did the audit. You guys, people who buy ICOs don't read code, right? Don't look at the code. And then me and a couple of people start to challenge him in China. I say, Patrick, okay, come on. You don't misleading people by saying this is your own making. You only spend 1 week because copy only take 1 week. And then a lot of time, some coders will sign their name in certain thing, right? And he doesn't even clean up the coder's name when he copied. I say, come on, you don't do that. And then he say, whoops, I didn't clean it clearly. So Quantum, I don't care how much it goes up by somebody stir-frying it, it's still a scam. So Neo is a copy thing too. And if anybody try to say, oh, I'm going to work with Quantum and Neo to build my application, it doesn't work, okay? I mean, all these copied thing is not even debugged. And then if you try to build application on top of that, it's not going to work. So the Chinese government is very heavy-handed. You know why? Because 99.9% is scam to begin with. So they just, for these people who are doing scam, they just say, okay, it's not working. We're not scamming anymore, in China at least. I hope they don't come to Gibraltar to keep on scamming. So yesterday I hear the regulator say you are very careful about your reputation, which is a very smart move. So one thing give you assessment. All the bottom layer of company of blockchain from China are all copied. So that's most of them. So I just give you a briefing on that.
That's we did get that briefing. Will mentioned the .com era. I almost said bubble. And I was in that space 20 years ago. And I remember an analyst coming to see me, said, I'm resigning. Goldman Sachs have offered me $8 million for a 2-year contract. What do you have to say? And I said, well, hire me, right? I'll come with you. Fast forward 20 years, there seems to be a lot of similarities with what we're seeing now. And obviously, there's a different technology underpinning it, but there's a conference every day somewhere in the world. There's huge interest. There's regulators taking action. Seems to be a lot of similarities. So let's go down this road. When do we reach saturation point? Can the ICO market carry on growing, particularly as some countries have just shut it? Is this a bubble? Why is it different? And particularly in your region, how do you see this over the next few years in terms of, is this another dot-com bubble that we saw 20 years ago? And why is this different?
I will, talk about our region. So basically, ICO is a bubble. If you look at how many are in the pipeline, and most of them are very low quality or even scams, right? So I think going forward, we shouldn't just do ICO for raising money purpose. You have to ask, we are a blockchain company. If we will use our bottom layer to do ICO for a company, they have to use our technology, because I have confidence of what we can do, what we cannot do as a technology bottom layer. So if I see a deal, maybe it's good, but I don't think I can make it work for them. I don't accept it. Doesn't mean they are a bad deal. It's just our technology cannot help him at this point, maybe. So I think we should have the regulators look at the bottom layer. Whether this bottom layer is used to build an application for this deal, or it's just for raising money purpose. So I will be against any companies that only use blockchain to raise money, because blockchain is to use to redefine, restructure the society, not for you to just raise money. Or it will be no purpose for blockchain companies. So I will only do ICO, our company, that this deal is going to use our technology. So we work with AI company. Now AI has nothing to do with blockchain, but if AI is going to provide service for people who will need a ledger to make sure who owns what, or these AI algorithm is going to be sold to different users. So this actually is an AI technology use blockchain ledger to distribute or store value. So it is not a blockchain company, but it can be related. So for instance, as a solar energy company, this company is amazing because everybody has solar panel. They just produce a fuel. Then you can create electricity, which save a lot of space. There's not a lot of space to put solar panels everywhere. So if it's just, so this is a solar energy company that will combine with blockchain technology to build a smart meter that everybody can sell electricity to each other. Now, blockchain is used to work on machine-to-machine communication and pay money, and also make it become a nodes that become a telecom. So these, I think, has something to do with our blockchain that we need to, or we love to do ICO for them, even though solar energy itself has nothing to do with blockchain. But it become a decentralized power system, then it relate to us. Yes, it's part of the plumbing, yes. So that's what I want to regulators to notice, that not all blockchain are created equal. So Ethereum now is basically become an ICO platform. I never see any Ethereum smart contract works. Have you ever seen any in the larger use? Okay, big, like a 1 million user up kind of usage. You never see it. You know why? Because it doesn't work. So people find out another usage, which is ICO. So that's the thing. So in the future, I see these ICO should be technology related, not just raise money scheme. So.
Yeah. So did this market grow too fast? Yes. Is it a bubble? Some sort of, yeah. But the way that it bursts will be different. It might not even burst. It will be very different from .com, because on .com it was basically a decision of 5-10 investment banks to stop pushing these very early companies out there. Now this is all decentralized. So even if token market stops doing ICOs, there will be 200 other people pushing them into market, and they don't need a permission from Goldman Sachs or Bank of America. That's a fair point. Yeah. So that's a difference. But then back to this, kind of a fundamental thing. James has just said that this is which is important, that it all started from a SMTP, like a mail server, and then came the HTTP. Then I can't remember now. MP3 files, massive innovation. So in a way, even though that this is not the same kind of a protocol as MP3 or SMTP, then this is still a protocol level innovation that will create the plumbing to everything, from solar panel to banking to, now the obvious first kind of a killer app of Ethereum is ICOs. So there we use a very simple form of a smart contract to collect money and then distribute tokens according to who contributed the money. Boom, super simple. But it is the first killer application, and there will be many more.
Thanks, Renzo.
Well, I can't agree with what Jane said. In fact, I can agree with that. An ICO, a company doing ICO should base its operation on blockchain. In my opinion, a brick and mortar company can as well fund itself using ICO, and it doesn't need to use blockchain anywhere it's in its process. Of course, it would look strange if they created a new cryptocurrency with a separate blockchain and so on, and why would you need that for such a company? But if it's just a token on the Ethereum blockchain, then why not? It's pretty simple, just an instrument to make the crowdfunding possible. For example, I don't know, I've heard of a company which plans to build a network of co-working spaces in Russia, and they are gathering the money through an ICO, and then they plan just to allow those who got the tokens to use their services for free. Well, I don't think that it's a scam. It certainly doesn't look like a scam for me. It's just another way to start a new business and get the money not from a single large investor who will then push you to sell the business and so on. You just get the money directly from your customers, and I don't see anything wrong with that. Also about the Ethereum smart contracts, I just want a small remark. For example, I heard that one of the largest Russian banks and one of the largest Russian airlines have switched all of their communication to Ethereum smart contracts.
I don't think Jane will be flying with that airline.
Basically, they automated the process of moving the money for the tickets. They were able to reduce the time needed for the full transaction to complete from 2 weeks to 3 days, I guess.
Yep.
And that's a lot for their business, and they are using Ethereum for that. And that, in my opinion, that means that it certainly has applications even for the larger businesses. As for the question about whether Ethereum is whether ICOs are a bubble, well, frankly, I think that right now a lot of them looks like they exist just for the sake of existing. So if there wasn't a bubble, there weren't even such projects. A lot of people just think that maybe we just slap the blockchain logo on something, and then we will be able to sell it as an ICO. And that certainly looks wrong to me. If you have a genuine project which solves a problem, then you can certainly go for an ICO, but you don't need the blockchain logo for that. But
this situation is already.
Yes,
now,
yes.
Now it already went.
Yes, I completely agree. Yes, the situation is going in the right direction. That the investors are looking into project before investing into it, and the people are well, less of them are going to put money into some new cryptocurrency, which is in fact just a copy of another one with another logo and another name, what Jane said, yeah. That's, I think that's going in the right way, and that such we will see a lot less such projects which succeed and gather any significant amount of money.
Maybe I'll try to answer this in a different way than focusing on the bubble, because I'm always reticent to talk about financial matters. I typically have members of my team who are much smarter on those points than I am. This is a little bit of a war story, but it may prove to be demonstrative. As the dot-com phenomenon progressed, it became somewhat tiresome as a legal professional, because you would have a parade of seemingly very strong companies coming in telling you how they were going to transform their business to become a dot-com business, and it seemed to make very little sense to me at the time. In hindsight, any brick and mortar retailer that was talking to me at that time about transforming their business into a dot-com business was probably relatively prescient. If they had made the move, then they may have proven to be a more effective competitor to Amazon than some of them are now proving to be. So I try to be open-minded when I hear people coming now and telling me how they're going to apply blockchain technology to an existing business model, and it doesn't immediately seem intuitive to me, because I think it's important to be respectful of folks in the industry. They possess tremendous knowledge, and what they're really expressing is that they view this technology as being I'll use the word threat, but a game changer in their space. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they should be doing an ICO because of it, but it is, I think, some fundamental indication that the technology has a real opportunity to be transformative.
I would say that I think that in terms of Bitcoin, in my opinion, is not a bubble. I think Bitcoin has specific value that it brings into the world, whether a store of value or transmitting, holding your own value in a secure way and be able to control it. So in my opinion, Bitcoin is only going to grow. If I look at Ethereum, I think that Ethereum today is mostly speculative. It's an amazing story, Turing complete, virtual machine. You can basically do everything. Smart contracts can replace the world, but up until now, the only thing that Ethereum does is it's a token factory, and there is no actual use case apart it. So in my opinion, Ethereum is highly speculative, and it serves a lot as a hedge against Bitcoin. And with regards to the other coins, if you look backwards 3 years ago, or if you look at the tokens that were existing in the last 3 years, you would see that I think all of them disappeared, except Ethereum, Bitcoin, Dash, and maybe another one. So I think if you look 3 years ago at the tokens, all of them disappeared except for 3. I think it will be exactly the same case going forward 2 or 3 years. All of them will disappear, maybe except the top 5 or 10. So this is something that I think will happen in the ICO space. Another thing that I think will happen, and this is similar maybe to the .com, and is something that is very interesting for us, is that we believe that from the current period, companies such as the Google of the space, the Facebook of the space, the Amazon of the space would appear. So everyone will die, but the companies that will remain and the ones that will bring substantial technology, actual value, true governance, and so on, has the potential to emerge as the Google, Facebook, and Amazon of the space, and this is the potential that, let's say, we are aiming for, and other very good players such as Kik, for example, are looking on becoming these guys. So I think other players in the market are understanding that if you do things right and if you are here to stay for the longer term, you might be, with a higher chance to become one of the biggest players in the field in 3-4 years.
So look, the conference is about to end in about 5 minutes, so I'd like to open it up to any questions for this fantastic panel who are covering the globe. So please, and we've got a hand up at the back.
You don't.
Probably going to be an Ethereum conversation.
So I just want to play devil's advocate here. I'm pretty sure everyone knows who I am by this point. We all preach decentralization, and that's the biggest thing about blockchain and cryptocurrency, yet aren't we classifying it and becoming more centralized as we facilitate and tell companies that don't bring any benefit or technological advancements to the blockchain are not allowed to do an ICO raise? So I just wanted to hear a general consensus as to why that approach is so necessary, and why can we not open this up to other ventures trying to utilize this token space to generate the funds to build their business model?
So I think that the question of centralization versus decentralization is a very interesting question. I think that it applies on technology. So there are a lot of companies that are going forward with a centralized or semi-centralized governed consensus, which brings a lot of advantages technology-wise. You can run faster, you have more controllability and so on. And there are other companies that really believe on taking the other side, of having something that is completely decentralized because it brings other advantages into the system, such as fairness between all the players, complete transparency, democracy, everyone equal, all the rules of the game is equal. So I think you see different players taking different approaches towards what they think is the right set of values that will serve their goal better. With regards to decentralized platform becoming more and more centralized, it's also a very interesting topic, and in Bitcoin it's a big discussion. It's a decentralized platform, but then you have big Chinese miners usually that kind of take control over the mining, and everything is becoming much more and more centralized. So the only thing that I can say is that the future maybe will show us what will happen. Maybe like in government, Israel is a democracy, but you have, 4 parties and that's it. And everyone kind of votes to the same party. So even though you can do whatever you want, somehow the decision making is consolidated into opinion leaders that represent 4 parties that run the country, which is very similar to what is happening maybe in Bitcoin. So I think the technology today gave us the tool to be completely decentralized or centralized, and reality and politics will kind of define what would happen in the field.
Yeah, candidly, I have difficulty with this question. I sort of wonder whether I'm qualified to answer it. I do want to contribute one thing from my practice that may be of interest. I talk to a substantial number of companies nowadays that do not have profit as their primary motive. And so to the extent that tokenization leads to more efficient process for folks to achieve sustainability goals, or goals that are in addition to the traditional capitalist goals that I work within, I'm already seeing that. I think it remains to be seen whether those tokens are a success in the marketplace. But from my perspective, the dialogue, decentralization has already changed the dialogue as to what is appropriate to be a tradable asset.
Well, I completely agree with the premise of the question that no one should be locked out from the blockchain-based fundraising, and that simple brick-and-mortar companies should also have access to this instrument as one of the ways to run their business.
Yeah, and I go back to that yesterday's point that that I said that I believe that all the investments will be like this innovation, behind the ICOs, and all this is so good and fundamental good change that all the investments, angel investments, crowdfunding investments, venture capital investments, and these current ICOs, they all will share, say, certain elements and be so to say tokenized. So to your question, no, it's not going to be only for blockchain businesses. It will, like everything, benefits from liquidity and transparency and tradability. Yeah, everything.
I think, the first ICO craze, I see the demise of VCs. Because when I look at the liquidity, if a company from startup to when they can be listed is average 10.9 years. So then the investor will be only the venture capitalist who live in Silicon Valley. And then I think a lot of people, ordinary people, get left out of have the opportunity to be able to invest in these deals, because most people cannot wait for 10 years, for liquidity. So I think the ICO, actually what it does is, day one, this project or this company is listed, right? People can trade. Then you cannot guarantee the price. The market decide. If people realize this deal is so bad, I think the price will go down to the floor. Nobody want to, keep that. But I can say that, like stock market, not most people won't make money, right? You are in the stock market, and a few people make money, and the thing. But I think our blockchain era of decentralization is actually we are replacing human with machines. So it will be the bot. Sometimes say, oh, somebody manipulate the market, so we get harvested, right, by some big guys or people who control bank or people who control the exchange, because it's human, right, in controlling this. So if the counterparty is a bot, so we all trade with bot as an intermediary, then bot won't take money and run, right? Sometimes when you have large, in Chinese, some exchange, people get so much money, then they took the money and run. No, it's so bad. But now, if you have a bot, bot won't run. They don't take your money. It's just the data. So that's what I say. Decentralization is about, can I access to a future unicorn early for ordinary people? And do I have liquidity in order to be part of that?
Perfect.
Yes, just to ask the panel to speak to the importance of open source. It's a primary difference, of course, between the .com and this era where .com went bust and its IP went with it.
I think open source is to let people know we don't have backdoors, right? Number one. Because if I have backdoors in my code, I can take all your data without your knowing it, and then it comes to the data sovereignty issue. So if I show you all the source code, you can, not everybody can read. At least it was open in the public to show you that we are not putting backdoors to get your data. So blockchain company, when we do business, we don't touch your data, don't forget, okay? In a .com, They take your data, they try to analyze you, and they try to sell you more things, right? Maybe they know you better than your wife, so that sounds annoying, right? We don't have privacy. So blockchain on this part is very, that's why we open source to say, we're not going to see your data. If I don't open source, how do you know, right? That's one thing. And the second thing, we issue tokens. We say, okay, we issue 25 million. Now, if I don't open source, how do you know I only issue 25 million? Why do you trust me? So the reason why blockchain company are open source is going to show you we don't have any monkey business that we put in as a code. So.
Yes, true, exactly. So all our developers are open source developers, and they publish code all the time. Some of the code is not is for other people to use, and some is for other people to see. Like our smart contracts are not meant to be just copied and run away with our smart contract, but they can be seen on a GitHub, and anyone can do their own audit and see that they are ours. We built them from the scratch, and they well done. So I totally agree with Jane that this is a crucial point on any good platform to be able to show the code and show that you have done it well. Especially since the security is so crucial, because if the tokens or bitcoins or Ethereum is gone, it's gone. So the transparency is important on this part.
Well, I think you can disagree that smart contracts and blockchains should be open source, because else no one will trust them. How can you trust a contract if you can't read it? So basically that's just stupid. But I think that some of the programs running using blockchain, they can be closed source if they are centralized. We are talking a lot about decentralization, but in fact, some of the usages of blockchain are still centralized. And for example, so-called oracles that are being widely used with smart contracts, they are usually run by a specific company, and probably if that's a large enough company and known enough, they can be closed source as well, if everyone trusts the company. And the purpose of the oracle is that it has you have to trust the company to use it. So there can be cases where there is place for closed source in the blockchain, I think.
I have a similar reaction. I mean, before blockchain was a widely discussed technology, we had companies that were successfully pursuing both open source and proprietary models, and I'm not sure I see a reason that shouldn't continue. Certainly companies are trying to pursue both strategies, and the market will tell us exactly how it will shake out. But I can see the continued use for proprietary technology and relying upon mechanisms such as contractual permission as a trust mechanism rather than the open source nature of the technology.
I think the interesting point is the combination of open source together with blockchain economy. Basically, blockchain is the first instance that enable people to have a business model or revenue model, even though they are doing an open source project. And I think this is the biggest innovation that is coming into the space. If up until now, so there are a lot of advantages going open source. It's about making code that is really, really secure. Today, open source projects are the most secure projects. It's about building a community of contributors that are very enthusiastic about your project and they want to contribute. So, Bitcoin has much more developers than PayPal, for example. But I think the biggest innovation is that using blockchain and tokenization, it's the first instance that people that write open source can actually monetize and make money out of it, as opposed to private companies that created their own code, IP, and basically didn't share it because this was their IP. And there are other open source projects in the world, such as Linux and so on, that are great projects, but no one made any money out of them. And they are weaker than Microsoft. They are weaker than Google Chrome in browser and so on. With blockchain, you can actually have an open source project, regain all the benefits, but still monetize using the token that is part of the projects and is making a lot of money if the project is good and the token rises.
Okay, so I know that.
Well, I just want to add a remark regarding what the last speaker said, that, well, a lot of open source projects, of traditional open source projects, get money from it. For example, let's take Android. It's fully open source, but Google still manages to get billions from that. There is no contradiction. You just have to build the right model. For example, sell not to the code, but the services associated with that code, and then you are good to go.